So the first question is there a data website for the whole school related to teachers, students, grades, student absence, special needs students? We do have a district website, so if you go to kirkwoodschools.org, you can see the district website, and from there each school has their own link and their own web page. But to find the data specific to our building, it's best to go to DESE, which is our Missouri website that keeps all of the data for school population, how many teachers, the ratios of student to teacher, and so that's Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and I sent that website as well. That's a good place to look. Question 2, what are the professional programs for teachers, and do these programs, are they provided during the school day? So at the middle school level, we're lucky to have something called team time. So every teacher in our building has like a personal plan time, and then they also have a team time where they get to plan with their grade level counterparts and then the other teachers who teach the other subject areas. And through this time, sometimes we are able to offer professional development. So for example, this month we are having a focus on learning walks, where our teachers will go and observe in other teachers' classrooms, which we always say that it's a great use of professional development time, because so many times we look for professional development outside of the school district, and we really have great teachers within our own buildings that our teachers can go watch and learn from on a day-to-day basis. We also have professional development. We have half days almost once a month where we offer different types of professional development. So far this school year, we offered a dyslexia training for all of our staff. That was the first one that we had in September. In October, we had a focus on wellness for both staff members and for students. So we talked about trauma-informed instruction for students, and then we also talked about ways to keep our staff well, because we know the job can be really stressful, and so it's important that our staff feels good on a day-to-day basis so that they can help our kids. As far as professional development, most of it is mandatory, but we do offer optional professional development as well. So in the summertime, a calendar comes out typically in the spring that shows the month of June, July, and August, and professional development that is offered over the course of the summer. So teachers may be interested in learning more about technology, so they'll find different professional development offerings on the calendar that are related to technology. So this past year we rolled out Schoology. Schoology is a web-based program where our teachers can communicate with their classes and offer resources to students. And so since it was a new rollout, we offered a lot of professional development for Schoology. So it kind of depends on kind of what the current needs are, and then we offer different professional development based on those needs. Dyslexia has had a big impact because of recent legislation, so we've offered a lot more professional development on dyslexia recently based on that legislation and what all of our staff needs to know in order to be in compliance with that. Summertime can be a tough time for us though with professional development, because it's also a great time for teachers to take a break from school. So sometimes it's hard to get people to go over the summertime. It's not required, it is optional at that time, and so that can be a little bit more difficult for us. We do have a district-wide professional development day in February where our entire district comes together at Kirkwood High School, and we usually have some type of guest speaker in the auditorium and then breakout sessions throughout the day. We have in the past typically had that centered around educational equity, so making sure that all of our staff is properly trained on helping all students achieve success. Last year, because we had a new rollout for our iPad, so we were upgrading all of our devices here. The focus for that day was on technology that day. We brought in a national speaker and then had breakout sessions for that. As far as summer programs for students, that's what the next question is about. It depends on the level. So at high school, they have credit recovery over the summer for high school students. So if a student fails a class at Kirkwood High School, they're offered the opportunity to make up that credit over the summertime. At the middle school level, it's more of a proactive summer program. So we offer a class called Algebra Jumpstart that helps kids from 7th to 8th grade build their math skills to help them be successful in algebra in 8th grade. We offer a 7th grade leadership group, so we have kids come do leadership training on community building circles and restorative practice circles to help build their leadership skills. And at 6th grade, we offer a program to help students transition from 5th to 6th grade and help them prepare for middle school. So it kind of looks a little bit different at every grade level. Elementary also offers more of a jumpstart approach, or getting them ready for the school year. So at the high school level, it's more recovery based. At the elementary and middle school level, it's to kind of get them ready for the next school year and more of a proactive nature. Next question is, how can you manage the discipline in the school? And are there any procedures that you use for misbehavior of students? So the vision of kind of discipline, or the philosophy behind discipline, has really changed here, I would say, over the last 20 years or so. Nationally, I would say we've moved more from just a punitive approach to making sure that we also include the restorative approach. So I'll give you an example. A student is late for class repeatedly. In the past, we would say, okay, that student has a detention because of repeated tardies to class. Now, they still have a detention, but during that detention, we take a restorative approach, like they may have to fill out a reflection sheet on why they're late for class and what tools they need to help them be successful in the future. So it's really reflecting on what has happened and then trying to make changes based on that, instead of a kid just sitting silently in a detention room. Another example is if two students get into a fight at school, they are still suspended from school, just like traditionally in a punitive system they would. But as part of the restorative piece, when we bring them back to school, we bring them back to a day of in-school suspension, where a counselor can work with the students to have a restorative circle to rebuild the relationship between the students before they return to class. So the hope is, by tying in that restorative piece, we help to rebuild those relationships to prevent future issues arising. Managing discipline across the school can be challenging because from teacher to teacher, it depends on their tolerance level, and some teachers will never refer a student to the office because they take care of all the discipline on their own. They call parents and they assign consequences. And then we have some teachers who don't feel as comfortable, and so they refer a lot more to the office and sometimes to the counseling office, depending on the situation. At the middle school, our most challenging time for discipline is typically in unstructured settings. So that would be lunchtime or recess outside, when we have more students and not as much supervision for kids, and they just have more freedom. And so that typically is a time that's a little bit more difficult to manage the discipline in the school. It is a challenge for me at times, just because I'm also responsible for evaluating teachers as well. I'm responsible to go to IEP meetings and team meetings and set up parent meetings and go to curriculum meetings. And so with that, discipline is only one part of my job. And so sometimes that can be a challenge to be able to be available to help support everybody when I'm pulled in so many different directions. Next question is, how can you build a good relationship with the staff? I would say relationships are my strength, and so, you know, you have some leaders who their strength might be more in content or curriculum instruction or professional development. My strength tends to be building relationships with staff. And it helps me build trust. It helps to kind of lay that foundation for the other work that needs to happen. Also includes good communication with staff. But I would say it happens over time. It doesn't happen immediately. This is my 9th year as an administrator in this building. And the first couple of years, it was really just getting to know everybody. And I think I built relationships through my work ethic. People saw that I was not afraid of the work. I worked a lot of hours. I put in the time. And so initially, that's kind of how I built the trust of staff, is just knowing that I was here for the same reasons that they were, to help kids, and working, just as hard as they were. So, but then also it's just touching base with, asking how family is, and kind of staying in touch on a personal level as well. I think that always helps to build relationships with staff so that they know you care. The next question is, are there any student assistant programs? So most of this comes from our counseling center. Our guidance counselors do an amazing job helping families connect to resources and making sure they have what they need. One example is we have a food pantry in our building. Once a month we collect canned foods. Our students bring in canned foods, and then we may know of families who need food. And so just last week I got a student's book bag and I filled it with food, and secretly got the book bag back to her so that the other kids did not know in the building. And then she took that home with her. So that is just one way. Thanksgiving is coming up next week, and so many of our families may not have food for Thanksgiving, and so we have a local organization that donates turkeys, and then we find out what families need them and help get those delivered to the families. So it kind of just depends on time of year. With the holidays coming up, there's a lot of families who need assistance with buying gifts, so we try to help out with that when we can. I just had a local business email me and ask if we had any family in need, and then the business that's kind of their charity that they're doing for the holidays, is the employees will bring stuff in and then donate to us, and we'll get us the families. So typically most of that goes through our counseling center, but we all work together to help. Who is responsible for managing students during lunch times and after the school day? So this is a great question. When I started here as an administrator, I spent probably 3 hours in the cafeteria every day, which was not always exciting, but we didn't have the support to help supervise kids, and so a lot of times it was left on me and our principal at the time to go do that. Now we've been fortunate to hire more teaching assistants, and so our teaching assistants usually have like one grade level that they're responsible for supervising in the cafeteria, and then the counselors and administrators take turns being in the cafeteria. So we each have about 3 lunch shifts per week that we're responsible for, so that we are there in case something would happen and we need help. But it is tricky, because when I was spending that much time in the cafeteria, it was really difficult to get anything else, done when you're down there supervising so much. But sometimes being there helps prevent things from happening that end up being a write-up on my desk later on in the day if I'm not there. So it kind of goes both ways. After school, we have teachers who volunteer to be club sponsors or sponsor an after-school activity. They do get paid for their time, so they get paid extra on top of their salary. So we pay a stipend where, depending on how many times they meet per semester, they get paid for that time after school. Some teachers stay after school just to help kids and may not ask for extra money for that, but if it's a club or activity, they do get paid for it. The next question is, what is the role of supervisor? So as the principal, I am the supervisor of all of the support staff, all of the teachers, so that falls kind of under my role, and then I report directly to the superintendent. So our superintendent is responsible for my evaluation, and I just had my formative meeting with her, and then we have another summative meeting in the spring. So she supervises me, and then I supervise everyone in the building here. So as supervisor, I'm responsible for teacher evaluations. So our assistant principal helps me with that. We split up each year who's on cycle. Any teacher who has been teaching 5 years or less has to have an evaluation every year. Once you start your 6th year, then it's only every 4 years that you have a formal evaluation. And so we split up both the non-tenured teachers and the tenured teachers as far as who gets evaluated. Typically we split it up by department. So I take all of the math teachers, all of the English teachers, sometimes wellness or PE, and then Dr. Dickinson, our assistant principal, will take science and social studies and exploratory classes. So we kind of split it up evenly depending on the year. This year I'm supervising 6th and 8th grade as well, students, and so since I have 2 grade levels, she has more teacher evaluations this year. So we just try to kind of split things up the best we can between the 2 of us. So as a supervisor of teachers, we are responsible for getting in the classroom a minimum of 5 times per school year. For our teachers who have been teaching 5 or fewer years, their evaluation is due by March 1st. So all of that has to be done by the end of February, essentially. So I try to get in at least 1 time per month. 2 of those observations have to be 45 minutes or longer. The other ones can be just drop-ins of about 10 to 15 minutes. So that's kind of how the evaluation process works. Teachers have to fill out a self-evaluation where they kind of rate themselves on the evaluation, and then I use that information to help me give my final evaluation as well, because they may do things that I don't necessarily see when I'm in their classroom, so that's really helpful for me.